The 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix is done and over with, and I think it went both exactly how we thought it would, while also having some key differences than our expectations. What's going on, guys? I'm Dakota. We're here to talk about what happened this weekend at the Bahrain Grand Prix, the first round of the 2024 F1 season, or should we say the 2024 Max Verstappen wins his fourth World Drivers' Championship season. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start off with our quick hits. We're going to talk our weekend winners and losers, what's next up on the calendar, and we'll finish off with looking at how our predictions did that we made before the weekend began. But let's go ahead and jump on into quick hits. But first, go ahead, hit that subscribe button down below if you are an F1 fan or sim racing fan in general. Make sure to comment below what you thought of the weekend itself. Was the race as boring as you might have thought it was, or was there something you saw that made it a little more exciting? And of course, hit the bell and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Let's go ahead. Let's jump on into it. Kicking things off with our quick hits. We'll start off, I think, at the front where, surprise, surprise, Max Verstappen wins the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix. I believe I saw it was by the largest margin ever at over 22 seconds to P2. And I believe the gap to the first non-Red Bull car was over 25 seconds. So a dominant performance from Red Bull, a dominant performance from Max Verstappen. And I say it mostly in jest, just because you don't really know what's going to happen this year. But congratulations, Max, on wrapping up the championship. It's obviously super impressive, the car that you've been able to build and the drives you've been able to put in. But I think it's pretty done and dusted, and it's absolutely yours to lose. So keep it up. We'll see what you can do this year. Let's see. Besides Red Bull, I think we saw a lot of small issues kind of plague the field from top to bottom, whether it be brake balance. We had a seat cracking for Lewis Hamilton. We saw steering wheel issues for the Williams. We saw a lot of really small things that sort of, usually crop up in the first race of the year. Before the race began, we saw Lando Norris change a couple of components related to his ERS system. But weirdly enough, with all those issues, we actually saw 0 DNFs from the Bahrain Grand Prix, I believe, ever. I don't know if that's for the Bahrain Grand Prix or for F1 in general in the history of F1, so I don't know. But a very impressive performance from up and down the grid, dealing with all of those issues and getting all 20 cars across the line. Next we'll move on to what an absolute banger of a drive from Carlos Sainz. I saw this joke made online, and I actually made it myself, of Carlos Sainz driving like a man who knows he's out of his seat at the end of the year, driving carefree and loving every minute of it. We saw him battling with Charles Leclerc early and eventually getting the better of Charles, and ended up getting a podium for himself. A fantastic race from Carlos, and I think he should definitely be very proud of that performance. Moving further down the grid, we have Williams. I mentioned suffering a bit of issues with their steering wheel. Obviously, famously, they were the last to adopt the all-in-one steering wheel and screen combination. Their previous cars had the steering wheel and the screen separately, with the screen mounted on the chassis itself. They saw multiple issues with the steering wheel over the course of the weekend, culminating in a lot of issues during the race itself. Most notably when in Logan Sargent's car, it decided that he needed 95+% forward brake bias, and eventually he had to basically make an emergency stop and trundle around to the pits before they could swap out the steering wheel, effectively ending his day, even though he had been running very, very well up until that point. And even Alex Albon got in on the issues, as he also had issues changing his brake bias along with other settings from the wheel itself. So hopefully they can get that thing figured out, because they look like they should be very punchy in the midfield this year. Speaking of being punchy, can we talk about the Haas? As a Haas fan, I went into this weekend absolutely devastated at the possibilities that we could see. But what turned out to be a weekend of pure just desperation for any sign of positivity kind of turned into a positive all around. I mean, we saw a Q3 appearance from Nico Hülkenberg. We saw a double Q2 appearance with Kevin Magnussen eventually not being able to put in a good enough lap to make it into Q3. But we saw Kevin finish in P12 and look very fighty along with the V-Carbs alongside. He managed to hold on to his tires and battle for his position, and ended up holding on to P12 over the course of the last 10 laps, where both V-Carbs were absolutely gunning for that position. And if it hadn't been for a turn 1 incident with Nico Hülkenberg on Lance Stroll, we could have possibly Of course, all hindsight and all of that. We could have seen Nico Hulkenberg potentially also battling for some punchy, maybe even points. So I'm really excited to see what Haas can do in Jeddah, and I'm really hoping this isn't a flash in the pan. Speaking of Kevin Magnussen's battle with the V-Carbs, let's talk about the V-Carb drama that I think kind of sort of overshadowed a lot of the things that went on towards the end of this race. Max was comfortably in the lead, and so there wasn't a whole lot of on-track action going on at the time, but we did see both V-Cars trying to make their way past Kevin Magnussen for P12, and we saw a very late call for team orders by V-Carb, which had Yuki secede the position to Daniel Ricciardo behind, who was on a different alternate strategy on the softs to try and make a charge forward. Ultimately, he was not unable to get by the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. Love it. But ultimately, he ended up finishing ahead of Yuki, and Yuki, let's just say, did not take it kindly. I think this is going to be something we're going to be interested to see all year long. I don't think it's any secret that Daniel has every impotence to want to finish ahead of Yuki at every weekend, and getting the team orders like this is not going to make the decision look any better, especially when there's a lot of drama going on afterwards, especially on the cooldown lap, where there was a bit of a spat on track and some of the words said by Daniel Ricciardo after the race as well. So that's going to be a situation that's going to develop over the course of the year. I'm interested to see where it goes. And it could get very, very spicy for the Red Bull Junior program. And then lastly, I want to quickly touch on Alpine, because Alpine, what are you doing? We saw them lose a couple of key staff positions, which they officially handed in their resignation and will be leaving, I believe. One of which was their head of aero, and one other that is escaping me at the moment. And then if it wasn't for a Logan Sargent issue that ended up putting him to the back, and a Valtteri Bottas 1 minute pit stop, both Alpines were running right at the back, nowhere near the pace all weekend long. And I think they must be feeling the pain, and it could be a long year for Alpine. But I said that wraps up Quick Hits. Let's go ahead. We'll roll right into our weekend winners and losers. Rolling right into our weekend winners and losers, we will start with our weekend winner, and I mentioned him once already. I'm going to go with Carlos Sainz. I mentioned it, driving like a guy who has basically nothing to lose with his last year in Maranello, with him on the way out to make room for Lewis Hamilton starting in 2025. So he did start fourth and finish on the podium, but he ran probably one of the best races outside of the top team. He was very much quicker than Charles over the course of the race. I know Charles was dealing with some brake issues, but at the same time, Carlos was there, looked on the pace, and really was making a push to catch Checo there at the end before it just kind of was a too little, too late sort of situation. So I went with Carlos pretty much just because I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he goes this year, competing with his teammate Charles Leclerc. I think they do have the second fastest car that we'll see, and I think once this could be an indication of Carlos just trying to really put in that I think this really could just be one of those instances of seeing Carlos put in an audition to these other top teams to say, hey, look at this, what I'm doing in the Ferrari, I can help, and you should keep me around in F1. And I think it's going to be super interesting to see what he can do this year. So Carlos, congratulations on the podium. Congratulations on the very, very well done race. You are my weekend winner. And then into my weekend loser, and I have gone for more of a personal choice here. I don't think they are the biggest loser of the weekend, but I am going to go with Williams, mainly just because before the steering wheel issues popped up in the race, it did look like the Williams were very, very punchy. We saw Albon and Sargent running both, right around the cusp of points before their issues really forced them back down the order. They also did suffer a little bit of engine cooling problems, but that's besides the point. I think this is a weekend that we could have seen Williams get some decent points, that these small issues really just kept them down. Obviously, these wheel issues need to get sorted out effectively yesterday if they are going to be really competing in the part of the grid that it seems like they should be. It seems like they definitely have a leg up over some of the teams in terms of qualifying pace, and we all know what Alex Albon can do in a race with a car under him that performs as best as it can as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Williams bounces back from this. They should compete very well around Jeddah. The Williams obviously very, very good in a straight line, and it definitely seems like they've been able to make some changes to make them a little better in the corners as well. So I'm interested to see, and hopefully they have these steering wheel issues worked out, and we'll see them come back to their full strength here in Jeddah in just a week's time. So what's next in Formula One? Well, it is a quick turnaround, as just a week from now, March 7th to 9th, we head to Saudi Arabia to race around the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Reminder that this is another Thursday to Saturday week, so don't be expecting to tune in on Sunday morning for the race. So keep on the calendars and get yourselves in order for that. Last year, we saw a Sergio, Max, Fernando podium in that order. Obviously, Sergio had a very, very strong start last season and took advantage of a bad qualifying performance from Max, which I believe it was a gearbox issue that saw him start 15th, eventually making his way up to 2nd. I don't know if we're going to see that again this year, but it should be another track that Red Bull is going to be very, very strong at. So it might just come into who can put it all together and finish on that last spot on the podium. That's the podium we saw last year. Who do you think is going to stand on the podium this year? Go ahead, leave your prediction now. A little teaser prediction down in the comments below. Let's go ahead. We'll finish things up with our predictions result and get an update on our predictions point standings as of right now. So our predictions results are in. If you missed the predictions video, you can find it in the playlist at the end of this video and check out the predictions that we made as a community. So I'm going to flash up on screen right here. These are our current points standings after the first round of the year. I, on 4 points, am tied with one of my viewers, also at 4 points, and our second viewer, also just behind at 3.5 points. And so if you are interested in jumping in every predictions video, I put on a call for predictions on our Discord, and we're going to be running a competition over the course of the year to see who can get the most points for their predictions, and the winner will get something and the loser will have to do something. We're still working out a lot of the details. So I love doing these predictions. I think the biggest one I missed on, which I was really kind of hoping on, was the one mechanical failure, and I was really close. I thought when Logan Sargent pulled off to the side of the road, it definitely looked like a mechanical failure, but unfortunately it was just, well, I guess fortunately it was just a steering wheel issue for Logan and he was able to keep going. But at the same time, in terms of my predictions, it was unfortunate for me. So we'll be back here in a few days for more predictions, as we are, like I mentioned, Jeddah is right around the corner. So if you are not in the Discord, go ahead and hop in down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.